everyone. I'm so happy to see some friends here and some teachers that I've missed very much. Thank you for joining me today here at Europass Academy for our weekly teacher talk, okay? So my name is Susan Gagliano, and today I would like to spend some time reflecting with you on the other virus that's been going around. It's not COVID-19, and it's not a particularly novel virus, but it's an old one that you may feel has been intensified for some of you in the last couple of months. And it's called teacher stress, and then its more chronic form, which is called burnout, okay? Not a fun topic, but it's an important one to talk about. So now let me just go into some aspects of stress. Okay, a certain amount of stress is actually quite good for us because it can actually help us stay motivated, focused. It helps us respect our deadlines. There's a part of us that we don't want to disappoint people. We don't want to disappoint ourselves. And a lot of people who are a bit creative often find that that little bit of adrenaline that stress gives you before a deadline actually helps you produce even better. So that's a different kind of stress that actually we want to hold on to. There's a lot of benefits to that. What I'm talking about is that other stress that you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. There's that state of stress that rises to dangerous levels. This kind of stress is usually accompanied by a feeling of great fatigue. Maybe you've got a lot of tension, especially in your back, in your neck. Maybe you have some digestive problems or some tension headaches, even migraine headaches. These can also generate a lot of different emotions. Different emotions like anxiety, confusion, frustration, sometimes anger, depression. And all of these physical sensations, these emotions, they also tend to generate some conversations in your head, okay, which we call self-talk. You know that self-talk that we have that says things like, I'm not doing this right, or I think my colleague is better, or I'm failing that particular child, I'm not able to reach him, or I'm just not effective, or I am not appreciated, no one understands me. Or anytime we have those phrases that go in our heads that say something like, I'm not productive, organized, technological, creative enough. Okay, those I'm not enough kinds of thoughts. The list can go on, and this kind of stress can generate what we call brain fog. So brain fog, you can imagine, it's very descriptive. It's this where I can't think straight. The emotions rise up and create a feeling of disorientation, confusion. Sometimes we get a little snappy with people. And this kind of stress, it keeps us up at night, or maybe it actually makes us sleep a little too much. Maybe we can't wake up. And part of this is also a response to that kind of strong stress that makes us just want to escape. Okay. So this kind of stress, when it becomes chronic, over a period of time, and it's connected to work, it can turn into an illness. And it's a syndrome called burnout. And burnout, one of the easiest definitions for it would be unmanaged stress at work. Sound familiar? So now, during normal school, we talk about this a lot in our courses, but now the incredible thing is that stressor has now entered your home, and it is now seeping into every corner and crevice of your life, because that stressor has come into your bedroom, It has come into your interactions with your family. It has come into most of your thinking because we have a lot to do. We've had to learn a lot of new things, and we have had to also help maybe our colleagues who were not necessarily, that didn't have as much experience with technology. We had to track down kids who did not have good connectivity. I've spoken to many of you over the last week, been in touch with you and asking, how's it going? What kinds of problems are you coming up against? And these kinds of problems know no borders. This is happening everywhere. Now, research shows that the cause of burnout is usually, one way to look at it is when a person's needs are not in alignment with their job demands. So this mismatch can leave a person feeling physically, emotionally, mentally exhausted. Now, obviously, anytime we are exhausted and depleted and debilitated in that way, this is the perfect storm for our immune system to stop working as well as it could. So we can generate other kinds of problems like high blood pressure. Maybe we are malnourished, which doesn't mean that we are not eating, but we are not eating well with the kinds of nutrients that give energy to our bodies and help our cells to restore. We might have different symptoms like migraine headaches, things that are quite debilitating. So talking about burnout is okay. I realize that there are people who are struggling with coronavirus, and that is an extremely serious thing that has captured our attention. But this does not mean that you don't have to keep an eye on your own self-care, because prioritizing it is fundamental. We are battling out there in the world a virus that affects lungs and most probably even heart. And so that's why we need to think of this as running a marathon. Now, some of us in life are sprinters, right? We get a new project, we get a new idea, boom, we're running, we're off with it. We get excited, we have these bursts of enthusiasm. Perhaps some of you even felt it, this rush of adrenaline. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to transfer our school online, and we're going to do, and we threw all of our energy into that. And now, a month later, when we realize that some of your schools are probably going to open back up again, some of your governments are deciding maybe it wasn't such a good idea, and they're going backwards on that. Some of you are going to have to face a totally different school environment with small groups of children, wearing a mask, or having even a partition in front of you, needing to somehow give them live lessons a few hours a day and then continue with your online lessons. And then other countries are going to continue with their online learning all through the rest of this year. And then perhaps even in September, we're going to see a lot of changes. So this is why we need to think of this like a marathon, where we have to pace our energy, our physical, emotional, mental energy. So let's imagine we're only on like kilometer 10 of this marathon. So we still have a way to go. Now, last week, my very talented colleague Marta Mandolini gave a great talk here on Europass Facebook Live. And one of the most, she talked about how to incorporate mindfulness in your online lessons. So one of the most important points that she brought up was thinking that we have emotions and we have thoughts, and to imagine them like clouds that are passing through this sky, and that we are the sky and the clouds are a part of us that are passing through. I thought this was a wonderful image because it actually makes you think about the fact that these clouds are often unnoticeable. Sometimes they're really not that visible unless you pay attention, but they are powerful forces that affect our well-being. And in this particular webinar, we won't really get into all of the clinical terminology and the different kinds of types of burnouts that you could have, and when is it burnout and when is it just stress. But what we're going to talk about today is how to minimize let's prevent burnout. Let's minimize some of the stressors in your life. So I'm going to talk about let's say 11 different points to help us. First things first. What is in your control and what isn't? That student who never comes to your online lessons, even though you have called and you have written and you have tried to flag down their parents as they're driving down the street, the ones that you've sent extra material to, and poof, okay? It seems impossible. All right. It is very important to realize that you do your best. You do your absolute best. And then at a certain point, you need to let it go. This is out of your control. Is the government going to open schools back up again, or is it going to be in September? Yes, it's certainly something that we can think about, but we cannot let too much of our mental energy go in that direction. Do you need more support? Do you need more support? Then ask for it. This is very important. If you don't get the support you need from your school for whatever reason, or from your colleagues, find out where you can get it. There are lots of professionals out there. There are lots of Facebook pages. There are lots of different groups that are talking about these same themes that could inspire you and could make you feel a little bit less alone. An example would be if you are thirsty for water, okay, and you need to go to the well. The well is where people would go in villages, right? Before they had water in their homes, they would go to the well in some square in the village, and they would pull up water from the well. Okay, so if you are thirsty, you go to the well where you know there is water. Because otherwise, if you are thirsty and you keep going to that dry well where there's nothing to drink, and then you cry about how thirsty you are, that is not a good use of your energy. So you need to go. This is part of taking action towards your wellness, okay? Because if you are not getting what you need in one place, it is not very useful for you to complain about it and to be angry about it, okay? You need to pivot and go where you can go. First thing. Second thing, this is a tough one. Time management. Okay, so what does your time management look like? Because time management and mental health experts, they often encourage us to look at our lives like let's say a pie. Okay, it's a circle, and we are going to divide the circle into 3 parts. Now, it's a bit simplistic, but I think it's a good visual. Now, according to mental health experts, this is not just me saying it, but we should divide this into 3 equal parts if we can. And one part would be work. So be work or studying or whatever it is that is, let's say, that's what we need to do as responsible people. And then we have 8 hours of sleep. And then we would have 8 hours of what I'll call non-work. Now, the 8 hours of non-work are going to include anything from your alone time, maybe playing a game with your family, buying food, preparing food, eating food. Absolutely, we have to put that in there. That takes time. Having a shower. Perhaps taking a walk outside, spending a little bit of time writing or painting or singing or dancing or anything that gives us pleasure. And I realize, okay, that there are very few teachers out there who actually have 8 hours of non-work time. You know, I know your secret. I'm very familiar with that. But it's interesting to spend a little time reflecting on it. So I would like to challenge you into make this circle, or make a list. And I want you to actually really notice how much of your work time spills over into your non-work and your sleep time. How much of it? So you could use an app, you could use a pen and paper, where you would just one day in the next couple of days, make a list of everything you do. You know, things like breakfast from, 7:15 to 7:25. I know this is another thing that you would have to think about, but this is for your well-being, and it's not just during COVID-19, but this is over the span of your career. Make a note of everything you do, everything. And, when you showered, how much time you spent finding that perfect YouTube video that, talked about trench warfare in World War I. How many hours of video conferencing? Because think about it, right? Oh, you set up a half-hour Zoom talk, right? Then before everyone logs on, then someone can't get in the room, and then somebody goes off, and then Zoom kicks you all off, and you have to log back on. And next thing you know, it's an hour. This happens. How much time are you spending correcting? How much time are you spending trying to track down students? How much time are you preparing for the next day? How much time are you spending towards getting a little bit of exercise? Okay, nothing earth-shattering, but going for a walk, doing a little stretching. How long do you really spend interacting with the people in your home? And if you have children at home, I'm not talking about interacting where you're telling them what to do or asking them, did you get your homework done? Okay, I'm talking, I don't know, where you would share something together, where you would make something together. Okay, and then how much time do you actually spend in what I call the no school zone? The no school zone. The no school zone that is mental, that's physical, that's temporal, okay? So when you have made this list, you go get a bottle of wine from the kitchen, you go in the bedroom, you hide, open the bottle of wine, and then you really look at that list, because it's not going to be easy. And when you look at that, and that is a map of your life right now. And so you now need to open the negotiation with yourself. And I'm talking about a negotiation where you would find some way that is small, specific, and realistic to somehow move 15 or 30 minutes of that work time into your non-work or your sleep time. It's very important to start with something small and feasible, something that is realistic. Because if you say, that's it, I'm not going to look at my computer for the entire weekend, I've decided, I'm so tired of this, it might not be realistic. And then you are creating a situation where you can again feel disappointed with yourself, or the self-flagellation Olympics will begin, and you will be on the podium winning the gold medal. No, these are all things that disturb your well-being. Okay, so in this time management, I want the mantra should be, everything will take longer than I think. That means the Zoom meeting, the lesson planning, the correcting, all of it. When you have made your timetable of what you have to get done, add 30% to it, time-wise. Every activity, add 30%. Maybe that is too much, but then you can have the wonderful feeling of saying, oh oh my goodness, I finished everything. This means that you are going to put less in that timetable. This means that you are going to prioritize differently. Because, okay, let's really be honest with each other that whatever it is that you've planned, you are going to be interrupted. All right. Your daughter is going to come in with the bleeding lip, and your dog is going to vomit, and your mother-in-law is going to call you asking if you have jumper cables because her car batteries died. And at a certain point, let's not forget that you may need to just close out the computer and go for a walk before you call your lawyer and ask for a divorce. Sometimes that is much more important than any other thing that you can do. So the concept here is to expect less. And this cuts down, at the very least, in all of that negative self-talk that says, I was unproductive and I wasted so much time and I have no control over my life. Because these words matter. These words have an effect on us. I'll give you an example. In my counseling practice, I have a client who, a young university student who she was very upset with herself about not being productive enough. And I heard over several sessions her talking about things like, I'm just so lazy. That's a key word there. That's a loaded word. So lazy, I'm unmotivated, I'm just not productive. My classmates are getting so much more done. Okay, this kind of talk. Now, the good thing is she was externalizing that talk. I heard it and I said, well, tell me, what is it that you're not getting done? And she said, oh, so many things. I try to prioritize. I made a big list of all the things that I should be doing. And I noticed that at the end of the day, when I go to check off what I've done, I've only done half of it. So at that point, I got a little curious and I said, okay, what did you put on this list? Well, let me tell you, she showed me this list and I almost fell on the floor. I mean, she had on her list things that I don't do in 2 weeks. Everything. It was basically, it was a festival of guilt. It was about, I have to exercise, I have to go to the market and buy fresh food, I have to cook the fresh food, I have to journal, I need to meditate, I need to work. And of course, work meant most of her day, okay, that she had a lot of things to create and a lot of things to study. And then she said, I have to read a good book. I have to watch, I have to research. I have to look for new ideas. I have to keep in touch with my friends. I have to keep my room clean. I also have to paint. I have to create. I mean, it was absolutely a never-ending list of stress. So this is important to realize. How much are you asking of yourself? What kinds of expectations do you have? And we will see more about that in a little bit. Next point, boundaries. Boundaries. All right. During regular school, your students can come up and ask you questions. They can raise their hand, or they could send you an email. Some of your schools have, the in-school domain where students can shoot you a question by email. Fantastic. Well, that's all been turned upside down, hasn't it? Now, before social media was a no-no, you wouldn't accept any of your students as friends. Now you can't accept them fast enough. You got them on Instagram, you got them on Facebook, you have them on Snapchat, they're on WhatsApp. I mean, they're practically on a first name basis with your cat. And so now what's happened is you are looking for any type of way of communicating with them. And so all of these boundaries have collapsed for some of you. Okay, and that's fine. This is what we do in time of an emergency like this. But the problem with this is that there is no time container. 2 weeks ago in my talk on motivation, we talked about having a container. And I talked about the container being kind of the structure. And the idea is that, this is a good time to reflect on how am I communicating what is in my container? So I want to encourage you to think that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you stating clearly, professionally, and with a smile on your face, I am very happy to answer any of your questions from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then again from 2:30 p.m. till 6:30 p.m. I will then check my phone for emergencies one more time at 9 p.m. before I log off until the next morning. Now, these would be my words. You can change them however you want. The importance of having this clear and communicating it clearly and consistently is a way of showing yourself respect. And this is a way of showing other people how you would like to be respected. You cannot expect that the other person will read your mind. It is your responsibility to think about what is your boundary and what is okay for you and what is not. Very important. You are also modeling excellent behavior for your students, who will learn from you all about what it means to be a person who is mindful of their own boundaries. Because they might be working on something at midnight and they might, without even thinking, send you a message. But it is not your responsibility to be all things for all people. That is a sign of omnipotence. Omnipotence is not a good place for you to be, because you see yourself as way too central, and there is a thought that goes with it that if I'm not there, everything will fall apart. I know a lot of you are noticing that your students are much more independent now, and you're starting to get some interesting ideas about, maybe I don't need to constantly be reminding them and sending messages, and maybe I can leave a little more space. Okay, so when we think about boundaries, I want to share something that I often share with the teachers who come to my courses, but I just love it. It's a quote by this wonderful sociologist and researcher and motivational speaker named Brené Brown. And she said about boundaries, she said, once I started taking care of my own boundaries, I may not be as sweet as I was before, but I am far more loving. I'd rather give what I can give with my whole heart than give what I don't have and feel angry and resentful. I'll leave you with that thought about boundaries. Let me move on. Another thing we can do for our stress is to streamline, which means to reduce to the necessary, okay, technology. All right, people, this is not the time for you to become a technological bulimic. Yes, I know your colleagues, well-meaning people, they're throwing all kinds of great ideas, and your colleague who just absolutely swears by Edpuzzle, and the other one who uses Quizlet and Padlet, and then you have that person who's using an escape room. I don't know how they're doing it. Okay, you know what? What you need to think about is your audience, and in this case, it's your students, and think about what is realistic. You know what you should be worried about? Even more than trying to learn all of these different apps, what you need to learn is who has good Wi-Fi, who is using a laptop, who is using a tablet, and who is using a phone, and who has absolutely nothing and is getting photocopies delivered to their house by some wonderful colleague of yours who has volunteered to do this. That is what is important. because all of these apps look different, behave differently, have different functionality depending on the device that the kids are using. So I promise you, you will have plenty of time to learn how to use all of these new tools. I know that I've heard from you that you've learned so many interesting things, and you should really be proud of yourselves, because I think for some of you, it seemed impossible, and you've learned a lot. You will have all summer. If you want to learn new things, it'll probably be a better time to do it. So ideally, you would find what is working, some platform that's working for your students. It would be the best if your whole school was using it, but I understand that that's not always the case. So if you find one platform and you just stick to that and make it easy for everyone. You can also streamline, which means to reduce to what is necessary, your tasks. So if you need to choose in your non-lesson time, if you have to choose between grading and you have to choose between lesson planning, well, I would say go for the lesson planning, because this is not the time for, the students are trying to coordinate a lot of things right now. Yes, they want to know that you saw what they did. And so I say, why not set up a system where you would send them emojis as feedback about their work? So it would be something that would be kind of fun, something that they understand, and something that would let them know kind of what you thought of this work. I think this is really important, because the whole idea here is to simplify. Put the human connection before content. Because now, this does not mean that content is not important, but without that vehicle of human connection, the content doesn't have a path to travel on. So it could be even the ones that are not coming to school, coming to your online school, and who you have to call on the phone, and you have to kind of chase around. That's in my very humble opinion. In this time, that is more important. Then the actual content, we need to think about how to reduce it to its essence. This does not mean make it easy. This does not mean to water it down. What I mean is cutting out the superfluous. When we are in live school, we might give them lots of little exercises and worksheets and what I call busy work. Now, busy work it's a reinforcement. Maybe it's something that it also shows that you're working a lot, right? I have all of these papers that they have done, or all of these exercises. This is now not the time, because guess what? Students are complaining a lot that they have more to do now because, surprise, surprise, teachers are not realizing how long it takes for them to do something. Remember the timetable that I said for ourselves, and I said add 30%? It's the same thing for their schoolwork. Now, on to another important topic that really it's part of the teacher disease, I say. Performance anxiety. So, all right, let me tell it to you straight. Perfectionism and coronavirus don't go well together. All right. So we need to avoid going down that path of burnout by setting realistic expectations and forgiving ourselves when we can't meet them. This what Marta talked about last week in mindfulness. I really invite you to go back and watch her webinar again, because this could be the beginning of a very big change for you in realizing that when you practice mindfulness, some of the practices are about self-compassion. They're about listening to the self-talk. And when I am more compassionate with myself, I automatically have a more compassionate eye for those around me. Because most of the time, when I am impatient with someone or sharp with someone, when I answer them in an irritated tone of voice, I can usually think back and realize that my irritation may have also been in my head about something else. What conversation was going on in my head just a moment before I said, "Could you please stop that?" Just something to think about. Perspective. I'm going to tell you, when my first daughter was born, and I was a very young mother, well, pretty young, I was absolutely filled with love, tenderness, looking at that little face. And I was absolutely overcome by a crushing sense of responsibility. So, okay, this responsibility and all of this, it was so new, together with being sleep deprived, it was a perfect storm for me to focus all of my concentration onto her. So I was focusing on, I have to be the best parent I can possibly be for this child. And that meant that I was constantly, my concentration was on her. I was looking at her. I was listening for her. I was watching her. I was thinking about her. I was reading things that were connected to her. And what happened in this is that I was zooming in, okay? And I'm not talking about that conference call. I was zooming in. And so, you know, when you zoom in on something that you can't make any sense of what you're actually looking at, it's like when you go and when you see Impressionism, right? If you go right up to a Monet, you don't know what you're looking at. You can't get it, and it's only when you pull back and you get the big view that you really see what's happening. Now, luckily, my baby daughter had a father who was looking at me like, "What the heck happened to you?" And I had that baby girl had grandparents, aunts and uncles, and that baby's mother had friends and people who were able to kind of say to her, you know, it's going to be okay. You know, they gently reminded me with love that, you know, we're all different, and you know, there's no one right way to do it. Because what was that behavior of mine? That behavior of mine was rigidity. It was when I was becoming fixated. And if there's one thing we know, is that when we are fixed on something, it doesn't allow us to see other possibilities. So the reason why I became rigid and a bit fixated was because I was under a tremendous amount of stress and I wasn't sleeping. So think about it. Is it that different than sometimes how we teachers feel? So the last thing that I could say about that is that when you notice that maybe your partner or maybe one of your kids or you know, a friend of yours, someone's telling you, "Hey, you know, I think you need a break." Instead of feeling kind of, you know, frustrated or a little defensive, like, why are you saying that? You know, I have a lot to do. Just realize that they are sending you a lifeline because they are mirroring back to you what you are sending out into the world. That you're getting rigid. You get rigid in your body. You get rigid in your thoughts. You get rigid in your actions. And this is not the time to be rigid. This is a time to be flexible. There are many things that we don't know. We have control over very few things. And so what I say is get out of the house if you can. Do exercise that you like. Listen to music that you like. Dance. Sing your heart out. And I also say get out of your head and into your hands. It's a wonderful way. Make some pizza, use some Play-Doh, anything, go garden. And you will come back to your school life, to the work part of your day, refreshed, like you took a little bit of a holiday, all right? And the last thing that I want to mention is I want you to notice at the end of the day what you did do. You can journal it. You could say it out loud to yourself in the mirror. You could tell your dog, I don't know. But the idea is that you would say it instead of focusing on what you didn't do. Maybe you could keep little bits of paper, strips of paper by your bed. And every night before you go fall asleep, you could write something on it that made you happy about yourself that day. Something that made you proud or grateful, but focusing on what is working. And you do that every day. Maybe you'll have a couple of things, and in a couple of weeks, you're going to have 20, 25 pieces of paper in there that you can open up and read again to reinforce what it is that you are doing that's working. You have 25 little slips of paper reminding me of what you have, of reminding you of what you are and what is, instead of what you don't have, what you aren't, and what isn't. Okay? Whatever you can't get done, it's very important for you to be able to say to yourself, for today, I have done what was possible, and tomorrow is a new day. And as the wonderful novelist and poet and all-around amazing woman Maya Angelou once said, something that I want you to think about when you wake up in the morning and you stretch and you open up the window and you think, this is a wonderful day. I haven't seen this one before. Because every day we get a new one. And this is something to feel really grateful for. I hope that this was a good talk for you. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I've seen lots of messages pop up, and I will look at all of them and respond to you. And I want to invite you to come next week. We're going to have another teacher talk here at 2 p.m. on Wednesday with my wonderful colleague Jacopo Falciani, who some of you know. And I also want to invite you, if you can see in the description of this talk, there is also a survey. And if you would be so kind as to take a look at it and respond to us, so that Europass always kind of has their fingers on the pulse of what educators around the EU are thinking, are needing, and would like to share with us. Okay, so thank you so much, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.